can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs like the founders of Atari, P90X, Einstein Bagels, many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. This is part of the IRCE E-commerce Mastery Series, where top experts talk about what works to boost your e-commerce business. The Internet Retailer Conference and Exhibition, better known as IRCE, helps you stay ahead of your competition by bringing in some of the top e-commerce experts and companies from around the globe. Adestra will be there. We're going to talk about Adestra today. Our sponsor today is Rise25.com, which I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran. Rise25 hosts in-person VIP events and masterminds to help conferences and software companies serve their highest level customers. We do them all over the country, including many in the e-commerce space. We did them in Austin, Chicago, Santa Barbara, San Diego, New York, Sonoma, Las Vegas, just to name a few. So if your company sees the value of bringing your highest level customers together to connect and collaborate to get their business to the next level, go to rise25.com, contact us, and we could talk more. So thank you so much. I am very excited today. We have Steve Denner, the co-founder and COO of Adestra. Adestra is an email and marketing automation platform that helps companies take people through a customer journey to give them exactly what they want. They make the distinction that it is a software and a service, and I see why, because all of the customer videos about Adestra talk about their high-touch approach with their dedicated account managers, and I think one even said, Steve, that the president of the company dropped by just to make sure things were running smoothly. So, Steve, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, back what the landscape was like. You co-founded Adestra in 2004, and I read you saw a clear gap in the market. I wanted, what did the market look like at that time in 2004? In internet years, that's like 104 years.
I was going to say, it makes me sound, I feel old thinking about it. The landscape was, for us, bizarrely similar to what it is now. So the text changed a lot in that time. The ability of all of the different platforms in the marketplace has obviously come on leaps and bounds. The sophistication of clients' needs has changed, but really, it's very similar now to as it was then. There's more tech available than the people wanting to send email can get their hands around, can actually make use of. Saying that, there were more companies. There's been a lot of consolidation since.
There were more companies then in the beginning.
Well, if you think about some of the big players around that time, like ExactTarget, have been acquired since then. That's Salesforce Marketing Cloud these days. Another one that would be topmost of mind would be Silverpot, which is now part of IBM, and Responsys, which is now part of Oracle. So the big players then are no longer what they were, but they're still the big players now in many ways. They've just got a different badge and different capabilities.
What was the gap that you saw then?
The gap was very much that those provide. There's sort of a couple of ways to come at this. The gap was the level of service that those providers were giving, and we felt, especially over here in 2004 in the UK, that we were seeing when we were talking to prospects that what they weren't getting was much in the way of hand-holding, of account management, of fast help. Even back then, there was a big disjoint between the clients, one of our clients' abilities to start from scratch with email and get just a level of sophistication on their own with just, a login and off you go. And what they were finding from the big players in 2004, who were at that time mostly American businesses who had small European presences, was that they didn't get that help. or it was hard, or it wasn't fast enough. What you found in 2004, that there weren't many people who had 100% of their time dedicated to email marketing. They were general marketers who had, a couple of hours in their diary to get the email campaign out, and if it didn't do what it needed to do, then their email was late, they might get fired. It's high pressure, and so having someone at the end of the phone or at the end of an online chat to just go, hey, it's all right, we'll help you get that campaign out. You need to press this button, it will help you fix your HTML.
Push the easy button.
Huge. Yeah.
Where did the initial idea come from?
Say again, sorry?
Where did the initial idea come from? Why email?
Well, I wish myself and Henry, my co-founder, and colleagues Dan and Carl, who are also founders, I wish we could take credit for seeing it ourselves purely out of our own inspiration. But actually, the four of us worked together in a business at the tail end of the .com era in 2000. And that business, the managing director of that business, and I don't know why, decided to change the direction of his business, which was a print firm, to being an email service provider. So that didn't work. For lots of different reasons. But the four of us plus some others in that business thought, well, the principle's right. There's people wanting to do this, and you could see that there was a requirement. We were all internet users. We were all receivers of email, and thought that there was a good business idea there.
Because it started off as a direct mail company, right?
Yes, absolutely it was. Yeah. We're doing print runs for people like Dell and doing data processing for other companies. It was a bit of a change, but it made sense actually. And if you think what happened over the following years, direct mail was replaced by email to a large degree. So I could see why it made sense to do that in 2000. And we just ran with the idea then. We weren't the masters of our own destiny between 2000 and 2004. We were a part of a larger organization. And in 2004, we wanted to do it ourselves, essentially. Get control of the operation that we had at that time, just in Oxford. So in 2004, it was really a case of, right, well, we think we know we can do this, so let's do this.
So talk about that decision, right? Because now do you just quit full-time and go full-time on this? What's that transition look like? Because, there is, a steady paycheck. There is other things to then starting at the time, a startup. Yes,
and it's funny. You look back and it feels more risky in hindsight than it did at the time. But we were in an organization at the time where the group of us, and there were about eight of us, I think, or so, working in the Oxford office. We were generating 80% of the revenue for the business we were working for, but only taking up 20-30% of the cost. So we could see that all we saw really was, well, that should be fine then. We can do it.
You could do it again. You could just pick up and then generate more business for yourselves, type of thing.
Correct. And we should be able to make enough business to cover the costs we have here. So I didn't see it as a bigger risk then as I would potentially see it as now. That's for sure.
Well, I guess maybe part of it is because you had a team of people to start with.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, right. There was, and we had a good spread of skills in and amongst the founders there. And we joke about it that Henry would go out and sell stuff. Dan and Carl would actually then have to write it, and I would support it. It's an exaggeration for comic effect, but it's reasonably true as well, that we did have a core of people that could cover the bases to support clients.
What was the most challenging part of that initial stage? Because like you said, there's a lot of moving parts, right? You have to get the customer, right? Then you have to have a platform that works, then you have to have the customer service, then you have to have all of those components in there. What was the most challenging then compared to now?
I would, typical to me, I wouldn't be able to bring it down to one, but I could give you two.
Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
the first one was convincing the larger clients that we were a viable alternative, even though we were a new company. And that took some doing. We were relatively lucky in that when we became Adestra, some clients that we had been servicing for a few years came over with us. So we were able to have reference points and things, but that only goes so far. So that was hard, a challenge to sort of go, because that 2004 date we thought wasn't reflective of our experience and what the capabilities of our platform were.
Right.
But it was a start date on a business that was, so you're only a year old, or you're only X months old. That feels like a risk for me to sign with you. And on the other side, because we had to restart and rewrite, we weren't taking a platform and running it. We had to write our own from the genesis of Adestra. Was catching up. Was getting feature parity in some way, shape, or form. So those two races were happening at the same time. Trying to convince people we were mature enough and expand the platform's functionality.
Yeah, and we were talking, Steve, before that marketers mainly use this platform. So I want to talk a little about the evolution of the features, because they're probably driven by the customers, I imagine. So
they are.
Early on, what were some of the most popular features, and then what have they evolved to today?
That's a good question, because it tells a little bit of a hint into our story as a business, because the initial clients we had were, for just out of coincidence, they were relatively complex businesses. They were media firms who had they were publishing events online, who would have hundreds of brands potentially. And hundreds of users. And that drove us to write a platform in the early days of Adestra that could cope with that. And that gave us an immediate USP, because at that time, no other platform had that. It was very difficult to have one login for a CMO who could then see what everyone was doing within his or her organization, and yet a marketer could log in and all they saw was what they needed to do. And we were unique with that. And that, was and remains actually one of our major USPs, and that was just the ability to do that was a big convincer for a lot of businesses, for whether it was because a CMO might be looking to get some kind of control over their hundreds of marketers around the world trying different things, or it might be because the requirements were wholly different. So you might have a firm, a client of ours might have a team over in New York doing things entirely differently and needing their software to behave entirely differently to the team in London, and yet they still wanted it all under one roof and under control. Yeah. So the fact that we had that in the early days was wildly important.
Yeah. It's something that if someone wasn't serving that type of business, they would have no idea that's even a pain point or a need, I guess you could say.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference to how you then build the platform from then on. So we were lucky in that regard, because it's enabled us to build on that. And
it's hard to reverse if you have one login and then you're like, oh wait, I need to create this overarching login where you can get your viewpoint into different accounts.
Absolutely. And when it comes to data compliance and how you might set up and look after your data, let alone user permissions and things like that, it's almost impossible to retrofit without doing loads and loads of sort of custom work and bits of random scripts and things that have to then be maintained, and nasty stuff, horrible. But we were lucky we didn't have that, and that was a USP. Now, as time went on with the platform, the way we've developed the platform has been typical to any business, and for the first 10 years we were bootstrap business as well. So it really was a case of what do the clients need primarily, and then also what
cutting out 90% of what they're saying, and only how do you manage that input of what they're saying they need, because obviously you can't execute on all of that. How do you decide what to implement next? It's
how we've done it has changed over the years. The principles remain the same, though. which is that you have to. We try and pick the ones that will have the biggest impact for the most number of clients, and also not write features that are restricted to a particular type of client. So we're lucky enough to have a wide spread of businesses, from sort of pure e-commerce, single brand, right the way through to international multi-brand B2B businesses. But it is possible, with a bit of thought, to write a feature that may have come in from an e-commerce client's requirements in a way that then makes sense to everyone else. So that's always the approach. We try and write everything that comes up in a way that makes sense to all of our user base, because then everyone gets benefit. And I think that the other thing is to be really strong on not writing custom code for clients, because that enables you to continuously iterate and improve the platform. So for every one major new feature we might release, there's always 20 or 30 enhancements to existing functionality that go in, and that's how your platform grows, becomes more feature rich, and actually starts to wrap itself around your client base, to their needs. How do we do it? It's a combination of listening very closely to what our support and account management teams say. Yeah. Also taking in information from the sales teams, because they're the ones that will first see a need that our clients
I'm asking this, and I'm wondering how they log it, like even more granular, because any customer, any business who's listening to this should be using some process to implement it doesn't matter if it's a software business, an e-commerce business. Like, how do you you get the salesperson's noticing it, where do they put it? And then the customer service, do they put it like on some Asana board somewhere where then it what does that look like? Because I know you guys are all about service, and so I know you're actually talking to your customers probably pretty frequently. So I'm wondering, how do they log that along for your customer's journey to then implement?
So we have, if it's I can go as granular as you like.
Yeah.
If it's a support request, so if our support team are hearing about something, they're the best people to understand exactly what the platform's capable of. So if they go, it's not capable of that, where they log it in, we use Jira as a tool. Where they log it gets fast-tracked into a weekly triage meeting, and before it gets there, if they think it might be a bug, it's gone through our QA team to try and replicate it. So a constant stream of what could be bugs / client thinks that it would be better if it worked this way are being run into that, and those tickets are then either added to an existing larger project because they're in an area of the functionality that we're going to be looking at anyway, or get picked up as loose tickets in the next sprint. With the wider business, account managers, sales, and our professional services teams, who are also, as you say, talking to clients and prospects all the time. Yeah.
First of all, this is fascinating, Steve. So anyone who runs a bit, if this is boring you, then don't worry about it for people listening. But it's really fascinating to see this. The Jira, then it goes either bug versus new feature, and then that takes it a separate pathway.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a blend. If it's a small amount of work to implement, and we think it will be beneficial to all of our clients, but it wouldn't form part of a bigger project, then it goes in as a loose ticket that then our developers, if they're at a certain point in a sprint and they've got a window of time that works, they can pick it up and do it. Similarly, if it is part of a large piece of work, or would make sense to be done at the time, at the same time as a large piece of work that's been planned in the roadmap, then it just gets added to that and gets actioned out through that route. We then have a slightly different process for the rest of the business as opposed to support, because it's less likely to be a bug, so it's less likely that we're required to act on it straight away.
Right.
And that's so same systems, Jira, but different access for the users, and they log it as an idea, and that enables our product management team to ask more questions. and sort of in a format of why does the client want it? What benefit will they have from it? Those sorts of, a list of a dozen questions, which then again hits that weekly triage meeting. And then the stakeholders who might actually, in the product management team, but also from the development teams, they can ratify whether there's enough information there to turn it into a series of tickets, or whether that then needs to go back so the product management team can engage with the account manager and the client to find out, right, well, we didn't quite understand what you wanted there, and fill out. And then at the end of that, we end up with a series of or one ticket in the system for the dev team to work on.
Yeah.
Then,
go on.
The next step is that you then, of course, have got a huge list of potential things you can write. And as you say, you can't write it all. Wish we could. And we have a cycle at the moment whereby we take it's around about the 30 or 40 most likely projects. So, and that could be a feature or it could be an enhancement. But they're called epics in Jira, but we think of them as a project. And we allow the business to vote on them. So everyone in the business is allowed to say, I think that one would be more important to me than this one.
That's cool.
Score it. And that then gives us a prioritized list that we can put in front of steering. And a steering committee can then judge and these tend to be the more senior people within the business, can say and add the strategic layer, because we might have a sea of clients and a sea of account managers saying we want this to be written, but we've got a sea of prospects that want something else to be written. So that balancing act happens in steering. And then what steering decides is ratified by the board in case the board strategy is any different, which it usually is. But, just in case. And then you've got buy-in all the way down the chain for the roadmap.
Yeah.
But our roadmap is only ever really nailed down for the foreseeable 4, 5, maybe 6 months. Beyond that, obviously, it changes as the priority changes and the voting changes and so on.
I love this. Yeah. I mean, I would love to see that. I mean, when a customer, I don't know if customers even they probably don't, realize when they're making something that it's following these, 77 steps until you're really methodically thinking about this all along the way. So that'd be cool to tell them.
There's papers to this, right? So we have a good speedy, we deploy new code every 2 weeks at the minimum. And we have 2 week sprint cycles. So our ability to, that agile ability, capital A, is really powerful. The whole process I've outlined and all of the various things that go around it, the admin and so on that goes around it, does mean that you can end up with a ticket that takes more time for the process than actually for a developer to code.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But that's a side effect. And the only negative side effect, because the rest of actually what you end up with is a much more efficient process of prioritizing the work and a better way of planning the roadmap.
Totally. That's awesome. So talk about one of those that came in from a customer and then that gets spit out the other side that was a key feature because of what you were listening to the customer. What's one lately that people are loving that came because a customer or a company had suggested?
I can give you many. So stop me when I get too boring.
Yeah, go ahead.
The most recent 2, I'll go with the most recent.
I'll tell you my favorite, by the way.
Say again, sorry?
I'll tell you my favorite from my research, but I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We rewrote our editing tool, our email editor, as a result of feedback, and actually it came from everywhere. We did have in place already several different ways of editing and creating HTML to send your email. Probably 3 that were being supported at the time, different ways of doing it, 3 different tools. And yet, a sales team was saying it's not quite as good as these guys we see and we compete against. They have something that looks more shiny in a demo. It looked better to demo. So it wasn't necessarily about functionality, although there's an element of that. It came across, our thing came across as
like
more
the UI looked better.
Yeah, the UI and some of the perception when you first saw it and first used it was better for some of our competitors that we were competing against at the time. And similarly, we had requirements from clients. We were seeing that our support teams, that the largest number of requests, and I think this will never go away entirely, but for a business like us, the biggest volume of requests we got were for people, can you help me fix my HTML? Can you help me do this? So marketers who aren't HTML coders
totally.
They don't have the time to learn that either. We're getting so far with it, but needing us to help them finish it off. So we had, our support team saying we need to look at that functionality, and we had the sales team saying
the same thing.
We're not able to demo something that's as slick, and so we that pushed up to the top of the list an email editor project, and that was. It was actually slightly before the time that we went to 2-week sprints, but slightly after the time we moved to a more agile, less waterfall way of working. And product management were very, very much involved in the release of that, and it's had a huge impact. The number of support cases is going down, even whilst the number of users is going up. And we get incredible feedback from people that are up and running with it. And it's slick to demo. It's been an amazing, transformative bit of tech, and the adoption of that feature is huge. I mean, I think something like 70% of our clients are already on it, and it's only been around a year or so. I mean, that's unheard of for something like that.
So, Steve, I want to talk about the next feature, but I want to highlight something that is you're talking about subtly, which is agile and waterfall. Because one thing that transformed the way I did things was learning Scrum methodology and Scrum.
Yes.
Okay, completely transformed how I do things on a daily basis. So when you're mentioning those things, if anyone's listening and they're not sure or picking up on that, where did you learn? Is there a resource, or was this ingrained in the previous company of using the agile Scrum methodology for people who don't know what it is, and they should be? I know that there's a book, Scrum, and people get certified on Scrum and all that, but I don't know if there was a resource that you loved that you learned from. It was it's The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. That was one of the books that I had come across. I don't know. What about you?
It wasn't that one. So I tell you what the resource, as is typical for any business, I think the best way of dealing with it from a resource to find out how to do it properly is hire the right people. And the requirement for us to change came around relatively organically. We didn't hit a wall. We didn't have a situation whereby things were going wrong, and therefore we needed to switch to a Scrum methodology. However, it wouldn't have made sense when we were smaller and we had a smaller number of developers, and we didn't have a significant amount of product management resource. That kind of support that methodology requires for a team of developers is we had developers, and no product management wasn't a function in the business that was distinct at that time. So it came from a few different angles. Technical director was thinking it might be the way to go. We were getting to a certain size in terms of the amount of people we had doing development that started to make sense to do it, to work in teams and so forth. We hired some very capable people into product management and into leadership positions in development. Therefore, we can now do it. It wasn't something where it was all broken and we fixed it.
Right.
But it was more of an evolution, actually.
Yeah.
But again, hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? And I definitely think that we did it at exactly the right time.
Yeah. I just wanted to sidetrack there for a second, because I think it's so important to highlight that, right? Because this is how the underlying it's run like even from when someone comes in and submits some kind of ticket. So I just wanted to talk about that. But back to the features. So HTML, what was another popular feature that popped up that people love?
People have really got on board with, and actually it's a smaller number than the editing at the moment, although that is changing over time. But we wrote an automation suite, and it was a crucial thing for us to do. We were seeing, especially around the time of some of the consolidation that was happening, that we were losing some clients to what were at the time, and it's slightly different these days, were called marketing automation platforms that were at that time distinct from
just email marketing. Totally, yes.
Yeah. And that convergence was starting, and we saw an opportunity to expand our functionality in that area and to make that kind of capability easy for marketers to use. Because what we were also seeing was that at the enterprise end, which is where we tend to sit, those vendors were putting together some really great automation tools, but they weren't really great for marketers. They were great for marketing technologists.
Yeah.
Which meant that our clients, we had users who were being told by their bosses, you need to be doing this, but weren't necessarily able to enact it. And so we thought, if we can write this tool into our platform, and so it's in the same place where you can do the same sort of campaigns as you've always been doing, maybe the batch and blast, more broadcast-oriented sending, but at the same time start the process of moving to more automation. But you're not having to learn anything new. You're not having to go out into a different platform. You're not going to have to do any data transformation or any kind of integration to make that work. That would be valuable. And that was the big project prior to the email editor that we released, and we've built on that since. That's a constant evolution, and it's been really important for us. And I think the fact that it is in one place, and it isn't a different tool, it's seen as just part of the whole. Yeah. Has been a huge win for us. And gives it a lot of our future functionality is going to be hanging off that more automation style, journey building.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a video actually this morning on someone, I think it was just one of your users, walking through the automation and, basically, okay, here's this list or whatever going to with an arrow and then kind of actually mapping it out within Adestra. Yeah. So it's kind of a cool and that helps people customize the journey for the user essentially.
Absolutely. And if you go to an event, you often see, and we do it ourselves, and you probably saw it on the video, that you can go to the nth degree with these automations, and you can see these incredible maps of our clients creating a customer journey for their customers, which take all manner of different complexities. And I think actually when you see that as a marketer, that can be quite intimidating. And you think to yourself, well, how am I going to create all those segments? How am I going to that then means rather than one or two pieces of HTML copy I need to put together and landing pages I need to have, to 30 or 40. And that you just think, well, I'm never going to be able to do that. I think it's a job of vendors like us to make the tools easy so that you can start small and work your way into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can do some really, really cool stuff from small beginnings. And
you don't have to start there, right? You just add on to it. I would love to see, I don't know, I haven't checked out the latest blog, but love to see a snap picture of some of those customers and what they, just a snap pic of one of the customer journeys that they have. That would be really cool.
Incredible. Yeah.
Because then I do want to talk about some of the customers and what they're doing with the platform. Incisive Media, Cheesecake Factory, I know Blinds to Go are a customer, but before I wanted you to talk about Incisive Media, but before I want to talk about what I think is the coolest. I don't know if this is the most popular, but when I saw the heat mapping, how are people using heat mapping? Talk a little bit about, describe it a little bit for people.
It's so for those that haven't seen it, it's a tool that takes the email that you've sent and overlays what people have clicked on, so that as the name implies, it's like an infrared heat map, so that the hottest places that you see, the brightest colors, are where people have clicked the most. And so therefore you can see from visually really easily where your end users, your email recipients, have been clicking on the email. And people use that. Actually, it's one of the most fascinating areas of when you're in the nitty-gritty of analyzing what's working and what's not working, because you see some very different results depending on the client's user base. There's no hard and fast rule. Yeah. You might hear someone might say, "Well, there's a call to action here." Well, actually, you might find that works for that client, the people that they have on their lists, but it doesn't work for a different user base. And you might an example I often give is that in a more newsletter style layout of email, where you have sort of picture of a product or a picture of any kind of picture, and then a block of text with a read more click. That's fairly common in lots of emails, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's a news website, whatever. When you look on the heat map, for some clients, it's always the image that's clicked on, and for others, it's never the image that's clicked on. But that kind of insight, you can only, it's really useful.
You've got to test it.
Yeah, you've got to test it. Absolutely, yeah. And the fact that you can, with our tool, show the heat map results based on the variant that you've picked for your split test can be quite powerful.
So what else have you seen, if you remember any data that surprised you from the heat mapping? Like what people clicked or didn't click that almost seems counterintuitive? Like you said, like if there's hard and fast rules, like always include a picture with a link underneath. Are there any hard and fast rules that people maybe missing out a lot of low-hanging fruit when they're sending lots of emails?
Well, the rule is there are no rules, and the answer to that question is always it depends.
Right, totally.
But the advice I always would give it is not only test, but your start point should always be to give the most opportunity for someone to click through to the call to action. Minimalist approaches whereby you might only have, surely the eye is drawn to this great graphic I have down here in the bottom right. No. You make some assumptions early doors that you must have a call to action somewhere high in the email because, with us all using devices and all those principles apply. But test. I don't think there's no distinctive pattern that says this always works or this always doesn't work. But there's always something thrown up that you wouldn't expect from testing.
Yeah.
I've seen the links buried down after 3 or 4 scrolls being the highest click.
Really?
And that can be from factors that you don't expect. I remember, you can't control what's happening elsewhere. So if you're a news provider and it might well be that what you thought was the 15th most important story, by the time your email's gone out, is the most important story. There's things you can't predict. And similarly with products, if it's an e-commerce, what your e-commerce platforms told you is the most popular product yesterday isn't necessarily what it will be today. So it's constantly testing is the answer.
Yeah, so you can get so granular with this, from the subject line to the body to the PS to where you put the links, where you put the images. Talk about Incisive Media for a second. So they left and came back.
That's right, yeah. Although they never quite left. It was an interesting one, and it's almost a badge of honor for us here at Adestra, the relationship we've had with a business like that, in that it was around the time of the this consolidation starting. So I'm not sure what stage all of those different consolidations were in terms of people being acquired, but that was happening. So there was a lot of noise being made by our larger competitors, huge marketing spend and so forth. And it was deemed, and I wouldn't contradict the decision. Actually, it was deemed that we were too small, and that we wouldn't be able to provide what was required moving forward. Actually, what we found was that in the attempt to move to one of the larger sort of all-encompassing stack providers, took a lot longer. It took over 2 years anyway to get to the point where they might have been able to leave us, our ability to support was as important as the tech, and that was proved through their attempt to move to one of the larger stack providers, and that not going well. All the way through that, we continued to help them get things out the door. So the relationship plus the fact that the tech was, we were our own worst enemy, and certainly those days, sort of 5 or 6 years ago, at not telling the world how great we were with our tech. So it's a perception across the client, that was different to the reality. And then when the reality hit home, actually we can't replicate that, what we're doing with Adestra, with this other provider, without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on professional services. That's a story that I like telling, because it's still true now, even a few years later, that we are able to wrap ourselves around enterprise clients in a way that's we think is unique to us.
Who's a good fit for Adestra? Because I know you mentioned a couple enterprise. Where should people be at minimum to consider Adestra as their solution? It's good. We sit in an interesting place. We gain clients who, from two sources really, and that's those that are using providers that are not necessarily enterprise level, turnkey providers that were great to get you going as a small business. But then you reach a certain point where the functionality in that tech, there's a glass ceiling potentially. So we gain clients who are on that ladder on the way up in terms of requirements. But we also have a lot of success with those with clients, and it doesn't matter what vertical. It really doesn't these days. There was a time when you've asked me that, I would have said, we're more B2B, or there's a period of time where we concentrated on catching up with our retail-specific functionality. So these days, vertical-wise isn't necessarily an issue. The commonality, though, for a lot of people joining us at the moment is that they are with one of the big 4-5 providers, but aren't getting help to use the tech, and they're buying from a business that can do all the hundreds of different things that they need it to do, but they never get anywhere with it. So they come to us as, let's start again. Point solution, best in breed email provider who can give us the functionality we need and help us do it. Yeah. And I know we have a few minutes. I have one last question, and I have all these questions written. There's so many more challenges with this type of thing, like deliverability, right? There's so many things that go into what you have to do. So it's wild, but we don't have enough time to get into all that. But before I ask the question, I think everyone should check out Adestra.com, Adestra.com. They have some great videos also from, you guys had your own email summit, right?
That's right.
Do you do that every year, or?
Yes, we've done it every year. Cool. In our EMEA operation, and we had our first North American summit this year as well.
Where was it?
And that will repeat. We have no concrete plans as yet, but there's talk of the North American summits being repeated in different locations.
Cool.
Whether that East Coast, West Coast. And I think we will also have a summit in Australia as well, probably in Sydney.
Just because you want a vacation there? No, I'm just kidding.
Wherever
you're vacationing that year is where the summit should be.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So they're really useful events.
So yeah, I watched several of the videos. I'm going to check them out, but go to Adestra.com. So last question, Steve, you guys did focus and you found this, it's a unique selling proposition that you don't just have a software, you have a service. And I think behind any service, someone has a method for customer support, but even before that, precedes that is, what do you do to attract great talent? Because it's really the talent that you guys attract that is serving the customer.
100%. And the only way to, in my opinion, the only way to grow a business is to hire people that are better at it than you, and grow teams that way. Grow teams by bringing in people with diverse skill sets. So I like to think we attract talent because we are a good company to work for, and that there's no hidden agendas in that. What do I mean by that? We've always wanted to be, since we founded the business, the kind of business that we would want to buy from. So if we were in the market for an email service provider, we would pick ourselves because it's a good company to do business with. Mm-hmm. And that I think is carried through the business. So it's how departments relate to each other. It's how individuals relate to each other. It's how processes are designed to work.
Unpack that for a second. Yeah, unpack so a company that's good to work for, what do you do that makes you good to work for? What do you hear from the staff? So that other companies, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, I should be doing that too, or I should implement that also.
Well, I think I don't know that there's any particular secret formula. We're lucky, I guess, in that we're still at a size where we can operate very much with that kind of startup mindset, where no idea is a bad idea, and that mistakes are fine. We can try things, and if they don't work, fine. We now know that doesn't work, and we're able, again, to use that word, we're able to be agile as a business still. And that means, there's open door policies for all of the senior management. People, I love the fact that people can join this business and then move around departments as their interests change, their skills change, as they want to develop as an individual. And we're all for that. And if you sort of add that to the fact that I think that as a whole, add all that up, then the sum of that is that it becomes an interesting and engaging place to work, I hope. And that although it's hard work, it always is, especially with a business whereby the customer satisfaction is the most important thing, then, if a customer has a problem, it's hard, everyone has to work hard to fix it. And there's a lot to be done. But if you're doing that in an environment where you'll get supported, and you won't get beaten up if you make a mistake, I think that helps.
For sure. So, see, where should we point people? Any other places besides Adestra.com? Any other places on the website they should check out or online?
I would suggest the website's a great jumping off point. Pretty much everyone at Adestra is on LinkedIn. A lot of people also on Twitter. And there's a lot of activity in both of those environments that is usually related to something that's happened on the website, but not always. So, yeah, I welcome anyone to connect on LinkedIn or follow us on anyone on Twitter that's an Adestran.
Cool. Well, everyone check out Adestra.com. If you see them at IRCE or any other conference, go out, say hello.
Definitely.
And Steve, I want to be the first one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Jeremy. That's been great.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.